Ouija boards. Are they harmless fun for the whole family, or will they doom your soul for eternal suffering? Let's find out! Before I start this video, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Horror Amino. This is a free iOS and Android social networking platform for horror creators and fans of any kind. Whether you love horror movies, creepypastas, or true urban legends, there's plenty to do on Horror Amino. Please stay tuned to the end of the video for more details on Horror Amino and how I'll be using the app for some future videos. Now, let's get creepy. Ouija, or as they're sometimes pronounced Ouija boards, are boards marked with the alphabet, yes, no, goodbye, and the numbers 0 to 9. With your hands on a planchette, it's believed that a spirit can move the planchette to spell out any answers to questions that you may ask it.
Ouija boards are a very old example of paranormal speculation. However, when first created, it was considered a very innocent game. It was only later during World War I that the board was considered related to the occult, after it was popularized by an American spiritualist.
I'm going to try my best to cover the paranormal and scientific beliefs and phenomena, as well as some of my own personal ideas, to let you draw your own conclusion on this fascinating little board.
Whether you believe if Ouija boards work or not is often pretty dependable on whether or not you believe in ghosts, demons, and other spiritual entities. If you don't, then chances are you're not going to believe the board has any spiritual connection. But if you do believe, or are simply open to the possibility of such an existence, then it wouldn't seem too far out to believe communicating with the deceased is possible with a board. This being said, from my own research, there are plenty of paranormal enthusiasts, occultists, and religious folk who believe that a hefty majority of the time, Ouija boards are moved by the subconscious and not a spooky ghost. This isn't to say case closed. Heck, if there's a scientific explanation that delves into something that we know for certain exists, then it can be equally as fascinating as speculating paranormal theories. The scientific community harshly criticizes the supernatural beliefs, claiming that the planchette is moved by those touching it, but very often unconsciously. This is the ideomotor phenomenon. Your body sometimes acts as an ideomotor effect to certain ideas, whilst you're unconsciously trying to make that decision. This is why so many Ouija board experiences state that the board spelt out the name of a dead relative whilst they felt they were in no way moving the planchette themselves. Perhaps you want some truth to the other side, and this happens without any conscious thought. Perhaps you don't want anything out of the ordinary to happen. Regardless, your fear could be what's driving the planchette to spell out exactly what you don't want to see.
To give believers a fair point, perhaps a spirit uses such intense feelings of wonder and fear to control the player's hand.
If I were a malicious spirit intent on causing harm, I think I would probably sense this person's fear and want to exploit it to further create horror in my name. But in an almost identical manner, if you had a friend who could sense your fear around using the board, it wouldn't seem too out of human nature for someone to want to exploit that in the form of a cruel practical joke.
Whilst you may not be moving it, chances are if you're playing with a big group, at least one person is going to want to move the planchette. So let's take a look at the board itself. Whilst you can find some handmade boards and some imagery that'll probably not win over any Christians, the original licensed boards were sold as fun toys and novelties, very similar to, say, those Magic 8 balls.
These boards were advertised as good activities for date nights, or even fun for the whole family to enjoy. Come join in, Grandma, we'll be using this to talk to you in a few months. And these boards haven't really changed at all, except for maybe the materials. Whilst the original items were wooden, the boards are now cardboard and the planchettes are plastic. Ouija is currently a trademark of Hasbro.
You know, the company behind My Little Pony and Littlest Pet Shop.
So it's completely understandable how people can view this board as a gateway to demonic possession. Friendship is magic? What's that supposed to mean? Their entire life and its relationships are purely subject to demonic witchcraft? Got some explaining to do, Hasbro!
All joking aside, it is a little funny that this device that can apparently tear a soul apart is found at your local Walmart right next to Monopoly. Hey, say what you like about Ouija boards, but they're not the board games that are tearing families apart and ruining friendships.
That being said, there are numerous accounts of paranormal experiences with Ouija boards, and it isn't fair to completely dismiss them. There are even many news articles focused on the unsettling aftermaths of playing with a board. A Tumblr user asked me if I could debunk this article on 3 Americans being hospitalized after violently thrashing and groaning after using a Ouija board. It sounds like a pretty disturbing case, and it's probably very little of an argument against such a documented Oh. There's your problem. Right here. Whilst I do encourage people to make their own personal beliefs, I would still strongly advise that basing your belief system off an article by the Daily Mail may not be of best interest. Heck, in just one article, the Daily Mail got Five Nights at Freddy's confused with Weekend at Bernie's, and Jack Skellington mixed up with Slender Man. You've really gotta take a Daily Mail article with a pinch of salt.
Okay, a lot of salt. I mean, salt's a repellent of evil. We're gonna need a lot to take on these guys! Whilst Ouija boards are designed and sold as a safe board game, it's completely understandable how believers in ghosts or demons can see this as a gateway to danger.
You're essentially asking a spirit to communicate with you, and on the chances that there are demons and evil spiritual entities out there, it would make sense that a good handful would see this as an opportunity to cause some trouble. Though I am somewhat of a skeptic myself, as a huge horror fan, naturally I'm very interested by the paranormal force surrounding such things, and I'm still very open to the existence of a spiritual plane. It's hard not to be fascinated with the concepts of ghosts, demons, and angels, and a lot of this wonder may draw people to believing in its existence.
And equally, I'm open to the fact that perhaps it's my association with the paranormal being linked to fiction, thanks to my love of horror and sci-fi, that pushes me to be rather skeptical.
There are experiments where Ouija board believers have used the board to contact a spirit and have gotten some very intriguing answers. Then, when all of them are blindfolded, suddenly the spirit they were holding such a precise conversation with becomes a mixture of random letters, numbers, and most frequently, the planchette simply ending up on blank space of the board. Now, I may be playing devil's advocate, very literally in this case, but suppose you could argue that the spirit requires the sight of the users to correctly communicate with them. However, I think that we can all agree that in this case, believers may be moving the planchette subconsciously, since they themselves believe, and so have an idea of what the board would say. There are many more stories of how someone may play during the daytime, receive no response, then perhaps try again in the dark lit only by candles, and instantly receive a lot of movement. This is something a lot of believers will argue, and that's very reasonable. If spirits can communicate with us, maybe they can do so a lot greater during the witching hour. However, maybe it's simply our natural instinct to fear the darkness, and so again, it's our fear subconsciously moving the planchette without us being properly aware. And this brings us back to the argument that maybe spirits simply require our fear for us to properly accept their existence and thus allow them to move the board.
Do I personally believe that Ouija boards are evil? No, I would have to say it's mostly your subconscious. Do I believe Ouija boards can have a lasting negative effect and haunt someone throughout their life? Absolutely!
Regardless of whether or not these boards can contact spirits, if you allow your fear to take over, you're going to have a lot more negative experiences than, say, someone who either doesn't believe or isn't afraid.
It's very similar to the fear of the dark. In a pitch black room, we can't see anything, and that's what makes us so fearful that there is in fact something there.
If I were to wake up, go outside, trip over and scrape my knee, I'm going to think that's unfortunate and continue my day, forgetting about that within a week or so.
But if a stranger were to approach me and tell me that they curse me, then later I were to fall over and scrape my knee, I'm going to be incredibly more upset and affected by the exact same event as are associated with an evil curse. And so, if you carry any supernatural beliefs or anxieties into playing with a Ouija board, then chances are you're going to leave with a much scarier story to tell than someone who were to enter with little fear.
But hey, those are just my thoughts on the Ouija board. Be sure to let me know what you think in the comments below.
I'd like to thank Horror Amino for sponsoring this episode. For those of you who don't know, Horror Amino is a great new place for horror fans to interact.
It's a free app available on iOS and Android that is essentially a mix between Tumblr and Pinterest, but purely for the horror genre. There was actually a recent poll on Horror Amino about Ouija boards and whether the community believed them to be real, and a hefty majority voted that yes, they are real and not to be messed with. This is a great feature of the Horror Amino app. There's a lot of means of communicating with the horror community through polls, blog posts, movie reviews, and chat rooms.
Whether it's classic horror literature such as Poe or Lovecraft, 80s slasher movies, gory special effects makeup, manga such as the works of Junji Ito, or creepypastas and internet urban legends, Horror Amino really has you covered.
A few weeks ago, I actually started the Sleep Paralysis chat room, which held some very interesting scary stories of people's experiences and speculations about the sleep disorder. The app allows you to create your own profile, blogs, chat rooms, polls, and more.
It's both a fantastic app and community, and if you're following me on social networks such as Instagram or Facebook, it'd be really great if you could follow me on Horror Amino, since I'll be posting and commenting a lot there. Feel free to leave a comment to my profile, and I'll try my best to follow as many of you back. So for a future video, I'm continuing the theme of Ouija boards, but this time focusing on the scary stories and experiences that many have when using one. I'll have a poll up on Horror Amino regarding whether or not you think Ouija boards are safe, and any comments as well as the results of that poll will be featured in the next video. So be sure to download Horror Amino and check out my profile for more information on that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon for a new video. Sweet nightmares and stay creepy.